Hey, coach. So glad you found the video. Make sure you subscribe and like. Make sure you go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better. Let me help you put banners and national rankings and all those things in your gym. Go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better. It's a community of like-minded coaches. We just got off an hour and a half call. Come over and join us, and let's head off to the video.
Coaches, welcome to another episode of Coaching Youth Hoops. I'm your host, Coach Bill Flitter, and today we have a guest, Brendan Winters from Pro Skills Basketball, former player and now huge club basketball owner. So definitely want to dive into that. Brendan, thanks for coming on the podcast today. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bill. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So why don't you give our listeners just who is Brendan Winters, your background, and tell us a bit about Pro Skills before we dive in.
Yeah, sure. I grew up the son of an NBA player. So I was born in Milwaukee. My dad played for the Bucks, and then he became a coach. And so I was kind of born into a basketball family. My dad coached. He started off at Princeton when Pete Carril was there. Just did that a couple years, and then he became an NBA assistant coach, and that's when the journey really started, I think. And so I lived in 7 or 8 different cities growing up. Moved all around the country. Got to be exposed to youth hoops in all regions of the U.S. I was even in Vancouver, Canada for a little bit. He was the first head coach of the Vancouver Grizzlies, but always dreamed of playing in the NBA. That was always my goal. Worked really hard at it. My dad never pushed me to be a basketball player, but he was certainly willing to help me. And I ended up going to play at Davidson. This is right before Steph Curry got there, so I was literally the 4 years right before Steph came in. So we were, a little bit of a smaller name then. Had some opportunities to try out for various NBA teams. Just wasn't good enough. But went overseas for a handful of years and was playing over there, and decided with one of my Davidson teammates to start a basketball camp in the Davidson area, it's about 30 minutes north of Charlotte in North Carolina. And we called it Pro Skills Basketball because our idea was, let's take the skills and the drills and the values that we were learning as pros overseas, and then also that we learned at Davidson, let's bring it to the kids, and let's also get college players, pro players to work just like we were at the time. So that's where the name came from. It has nothing to do with us thinking we're going to turn kids into pros or anything like that. We did that for a few summers, and it grew and grew, and we really enjoyed it. And we were both ready to retire about the same time from playing. And because we had this summer camp, we thought we might be able to do it year round and give it a shot full time. So that's what we did. So about 2011 or 2012, we retired. We moved back to Charlotte, North Carolina, and started Pro Skills full time. And the initial idea was just, hey, let's kind of do an academy, meaning skill work, clinics, training, camps, all that. Nothing to do with teams. It was just going to be straight as skills academy. But pretty quickly, we got some parents begged us to start some AAU teams. We didn't really know what that was all about. Did a little research to realize it was, even at the time, it was like pretty toxic, not great. So we decided, okay, maybe there's an opportunity here for us to kind of change that culture and help some kids. So we pivoted into kind of the AAU side, and from there it's kind of taken off over the last 10-ish years or so. And here we are today, and we're in 20 cities around the US with our main thing is AAU teams. We call them club teams just because of the AAU kind of connotation, negative connotation, I guess. But so we've got about 200 teams or so in 20 cities, and we're expanding pretty quickly. And so that's where we are today.
Wow. Did you say 200 teams?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It
Lot
is.
to manage.
It
But you got
it is a lot.
you got staff to help with that. And I mean, it's a legitimate business. It's not just some guy starting a few teams. It's a business.
Yeah. No, I mean, we realized early on that kind of a lot of the model was just like, hey, just guys like kind of throwing out jerseys here and there. Like, yeah,
Right.
you want to coach, you have a team, sure, take these jerseys and go do
Yeah.
whatever you want. And ours was the complete opposite of that. We're kind of control freaks. We believe in doing things a certain way, and
Yeah.
again, a lot of it comes from Davidson, comes from overseas, and our model was we're going to hire coaches, so we're not going to do like the mommy daddy ball thing. We're going to pay them for their time, not a ton, but probably better than volunteering, but it's essentially volunteering, and but we're gonna interview them. They're gonna need to be qualified. They're gonna be positive. We're gonna practice twice a week. We're not gonna play every weekend. We're not gonna travel around the country chasing sixth grade national championships and things like that. And then we're gonna also do workouts and clinics and keep that skill, that focus on skill development in there as well. So that's what we did, and it really took off. And then honestly, we got lucky. Like we just knew some guys from playing overseas, include one of my best friends who I grew up with in Denver, Colorado. He had been playing in Spain and he was ready to retire. And we had been doing it a year in Charlotte. And I said, hey, come live with me. We need some help. I think you'll like this. He comes from a coaching family too. He came, did it for a year here in Charlotte, said, I love it. Let me take it back to Denver and start it up. And so we said, okay, go. And it started working in Denver. And that's when we were like, you know what? Like maybe there's some other pro guys like us that kind of don't know what they should do after they're done playing that want to do this and will be really good at it. And that's how we started expanding into other cities. That was never the intention from the start. We kind of just lucked into it or fell into it. And from there, we've just been able to grow to like 20 cities or so, and we have some really good people on the ground in every city, starting with the city director and then the coaches and management underneath that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think you're right on, taking that approach, getting the coaches skilled up as well and certified, and they obviously have the skills, but some of the other things that come along with that, I think, are important, especially when you're coaching youth, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
But let's dive into this. One of the topics that you and I had discussed was this European style of play. And I've been hearing this more and more come up in conversations. We had Alex Sarama on the show a few podcasts ago. He obviously talks about that quite a bit. And you had mentioned that 30% of NBA players are now from outside of the United States. That's a huge number, right? 30% and growing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like the last number of years, I think you've heard people kind of say that, and you were thinking like, I mean, sometimes I was like, that seems a little subjective. Like, is that true? I wasn't sure
Yeah.
5-10 years ago, but like now it's like it's objective. Like the data says there was 125 players born outside the U.S. playing in the NBA this year. And the experts are coming out and saying that is probably going to grow. And if you look at the NBA draft like projections this year, I looked at it the other day. Like out of the top 10, I think 6 were international or
Wow.
something like that. Like
Yeah.
it was a lot, and so I do think the
Huge.
internet, and then you just look at what's happened in the Olympics and some of the kind of
That's
world
true.
championship stuff, and I mean we're not blowing teams out anymore, and we are
Yeah.
losing sometimes, and so it's the Euros are definitely catching up to us. Basketball is becoming more popular over there. Those players are getting better, getting more skilled, and our players here, it's not that they're getting less skilled, because I think they're more skilled than ever individually. It's that they don't know how to play the team game, I think. And even the coaches in the NBA, and Adam Silver is talking about that. They're more skilled than ever, but they get to the NBA and they sometimes don't know how to set a proper screen, or,
Mm-hmm.
just basic fundamentals that I think 10 to 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we just kind of took for granted.
Yeah. Yeah, it's totally true. It's funny that you say that. Yeah, I'm going to bring this down to kind of a grade school level. One of the things that we worked on yesterday, because just kind of thinking about like, what is my team? What are these skills that we're lacking right now? And one of the things that we did, we spent an hour, little over an hour on 5-on-5 no dribble.
I love no dribble.
Yeah. And just to work on pass, and I had different constraints and things they had to focus on during those times. And we did it like 8-minute sprints. So every 8 minutes, I let them play. I counted the number of times I talked, so I wouldn't interrupt them too much, taking notes on the sidelines. And then we did a break, right? And then we went back to the play. But just in that hour and 45, just working on how to handle pressure and getting open and using your cuts correctly and passing, cutting after you pass, all those just like basic stuff. And off-ball screens, although I wish they would have set more off-ball screens, but we'll get there.
Yeah,
But the
yeah,
point
yeah.
of all of that is I think that it's really important. Again, you could say, again, you're going to have some people say, well, European players, it's just becoming more popular as time goes on, and that's why there are more of them appearing in the draft. But let's dive into the details of that. Like, truly, what is it that you built your club team around it? We're hearing more about it. We're seeing the skilled players. What do they do different than we do here in the States?
Yeah, I think here in the States, you kind of have, if there's a spectrum, it's like, you have your kind of like 1-on-0 skill work. So you're by yourself doing your skill work,
Yeah.
or you're working with a trainer, right? One-on-one, you're working with a trainer. Tons of kids here in the States do that. That's why they're more skilled than ever. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, or down to the far end of the spectrum, you got your 5-on-5. Everyone does that, right? And a big piece is because AAU, we play most teams play like almost every weekend in the spring and the summer. PS Pro Skills does not, but
Yeah, we
most
don't
do.
either.
But what about everything in between there? I think that's what's missing. In the States, kids, they all work with trainers, one-on-one, or maybe like, hey, maybe there's 1 or 2 or 3 other kids in there, but it's all individual moves, right? It's what the reason why you were doing no dribble stuff, part of the reason is probably because there's so much wasted dribbles. They're going through their legs 5 times. They're not going anywhere with their dribble. They're over dribbling, not passing. But and that stems, I think, from a lot of the training stuff where they put up 5 cones and they make them go through the legs, behind the back, in and out. And it's just like, what are we doing here? And then on the weekends, then they'll just go play 5-on-5 games, in these AAU, where it's like, there are a lot of great AAU coaches, but there's a lot of bad ones too. And a lot of times it's just like, hey, roll the ball out and go play. So what about the playing 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 or even 4-on-4?
Yeah.
Like, that's where you learn how to play, especially 3-on-3. Because that's what basketball is at the end of the day. It's a lot of triangle stuff, a lot of 3-man play. And I think that's where Americans are lacking. And I know USA Basketball is doing a great job trying to get 3-on-3 going. It's great. It's going to become an Olympic sport. So hopefully that becomes more popular. But the Europeans do a ton of that. I was just in Spain 2 weeks ago with my wife. We were on vacation, but one of my buddies, who was a Davidson player, he's 10 years younger than me. He's playing in Malaga, and it's one of the best teams in the top division of Spain. I went to their practice and watched it, and they played in their practice. They played 3-on-3, then they went to 4-on-4, and then finally they played 5-on-5. But everything was controlled, situational, and maybe you go up and down once or twice. But that's just an example of, even at that pro level over there, they're playing 3-on-3, they're playing 4-on-4, and then 5-on-5 from kind of situations. And that is what I think we're lacking here in the States.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I did as well with my club team is we started a 3-on-3 league.
Yeah.
And, we run that twice a season. And I think the best compliment I've ever received was when a parent came up to me and said, she didn't mean this positively either. It's so messy, so
Yeah.
disorganized. And I said, thank you.
Yeah.
I said I was happy because I said that learning is messy
Yeah.
and they're figuring it out on their own. I said, now I want you to go stand on the sidelines and hear the conversations they're having with one another. Hear how
Hmm.
they're actually communicating with one another.
Yeah.
And I said, that's where the magic happens, and that's where the beauty happens. They're figuring
And
it out.
yeah, and the same goes for when you do any no dribble stuff. I mean, that is ugly at first. You're like,
Ugly.
they
Yeah.
have no idea what to do. The first 5 minutes is like, oh, you like almost as a coach, you're like, oh my gosh, should I just end this thing because this is brutal.
Yeah.
But like then they start figuring it out and they start
Yeah.
learning, and then you can go, okay, now we got one dribble, and you can work your way up. But yeah, like that's part of the problem is it is ugly, 3-on-3 and or no dribble or whatever it is. But like you said, that's how you learn. And the
Yeah.
hard thing, because we go through it too, we run 3-on-3 leagues in a lot of our cities, Charlotte, Richmond, some of our other cities, and we have parents come up to us and say like, we just want to go play 5-on-5. We want to go to these weekend tournaments with where there's a ref and 5-on-5 and this and that,
Yeah.
and they don't understand like. But then a lot of times, like they'll go through a whole season of the 3-on-3, and they'll be like, "Oh, I get it now. Like my kid had the ball so much more, um, got just so much better learning how to play." And but you have to sit through that ugliness and that uncomfortableness sometimes, and a lot of times parents will end up getting it, but you gotta convince them of it, and it's
Yeah.
getting harder and harder, to be honest with you. It just seems like they
Oh
just want
yeah.
to go to these gyms, play in the tournament, 5-on-5, refs, all that,
Yep.
controlled, and
Well, I'm glad
uh,
somebody else is also experiencing that because the comment I always hear is, I want to play real basketball.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
we get that a lot, and it's like it's getting more and more. To be honest with you,
yeah.
that's the whole point of this. It's getting harder to say like, hey, we're gonna do 3-on-3 and like standing our ground there because like the kickback seems to be growing for whatever reason. I have no idea why, because it's like these 5-on-5 like tournaments or leagues are oftentimes very ugly, but for whatever reason that's what the parents want, and they're less willing to listen to the experts, whatever coaches they are
Yeah.
out there. And so it's getting a little more difficult, but
Well,
we
we'll
we
keep
feel
at
your
it,
pain.
Coach. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
keep at it and still plugging away. I'll work on the West Coast and maybe we can meet in the middle and
Yeah,
change
that
change
sounds
the
good.
world a little bit. Let's dive into the details of that though, of if you were, or if club owner, let's just start with the club owner. Club owner's listening right now, and he likes this idea of the European basketball. He hears it, he sees what's going on in the NBA. What would you say to him right now, like his top 3 things to change his club or his organization?
Yeah, I would say more practice, more skill work, less games. So that's number one, is like, how many times a week are you practicing? Is it 0? Is it 1? Is it 2? Now, I'm not saying you got to practice, especially, with young kids, you don't need to practice 3 days a week, 4 or 5, but, 2 days a week is pretty good for a season. And then in practice, what are you doing in that? Are you rolling the ball out and just like scrimmaging the whole time, sitting back and hanging out? Or are you actually doing intentional skill work, individual skill work, small group, team based stuff?
Hmm.
Um, that's a that's a big piece of it. So more fundamentals, less games. Um, are you traveling, across the country? Spending more money and more time traveling when that money and time could be spent on staying home doing skill development stuff, or even just rest. That's a big piece of it. Uh, what kind of defense are you playing? Are you playing zone? Because we all know it's easy to play zone in 3rd and 4th grade when kids can't skip past, they can't shoot threes. Um, I mean, the easiest thing in the world is just to get a super athletic team together, press full court, get back into like some sort of trapping zone, and then it's just steal layup, steal layup, steal layup. And then these kids get to high school, they can't shoot. All they know how to play is some sort of pressing zone, but everyone's as strong and as athletic as them now. So that's like negated. And now those kids, like, they're not making their high school teams, or they were once proclaimed the best sixth grader in the state, and now they're just an average player. They're not even going to play in college because they can't shoot. They don't have some of these other skills. They don't know how to play within the team system. So, yeah, just like, what concepts are you teaching? And that part of that is, that's another piece, like, of the problem with the American system, is the rules are all different. State to state,
Yeah.
tournament to tournament, the shot clock stuff, the just quarters, halves, like, it's just all over the place. Whereas Europe, it's all FIBA rules. They mandate no zone, until I can't remember what age it is, 14, 15 or whatever it is. So like, they grow up playing man to man. And so I think being very conscientious of, like, what team concepts are you teaching, offense and defense? Are you just going to pick and rolls every single time, or are you teaching them how to play in a motion and screen off the ball, that sort of stuff? So I think those are some of the things that are a problem here in the States, that I think club owners or coaches should be thinking about.
So okay, let's dive into that. So okay, so I have I'll use me as an example. So we practice 2 times a week, and I can tell you firsthand, I changed my practice philosophy. I guess the dramatic change was last year, and I went to more skill-based practices twice a week. We hardly did any concept stuff, meaning, oh, we're going to run this play, right, or this offense, or right, but I focused on the fundamentals. Huge transformation, okay, in what we were and what the output was for the kids. But then you go to a tournament, and you have, like you said, all these different rules, zone, no zone. I mean, we actually don't have run to that. It's more about the 20-minute halves, right? You have teams that should be playing 2 levels up, and they're playing 2 levels down, so they can get some wins, right? Some easy wins. Not fun for anybody. There's obviously, like you said, good and the bad with all of that. At the global level, something has to change in the States. But is that good? Is the different types of play good longer term? If I'm playing, I got some zone, some not. We see a lot of zone. So then I got to teach my players how to play against the zone, and that's going to set them up later in life. Does that delay the process of their advancement, because now I got to teach man and zone defenses or offenses? Sorry. I just kind of want to dig into the details. In the States, we have, we go to these tournaments, we join these tournaments, we set up, in our area, even out a little bit further. The rules are the rules of the tournament, right? There's no global group that's overseeing everything. So is that good or bad? I mean, truly.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's obviously positives and negatives to everything. I mean, I do think in an ideal situation, it is like, I'm not saying zone is a bad defense.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But
yeah.
But it's almost like at the younger levels, it's like cheating. And coaches, it's just, the problem is we have too many adults involved that put their ego and themselves ahead of the development of the kids. And some understand that they're like, we play zone because we want to win. We want to win every game. We want to win championships. And it's like, congratulations, you won the 4th grade North Carolina state championship. Like, great job. And some don't know. I think some honestly just think, like, they don't understand that, zone works because at these younger age groups, because they're not strong enough to shoot threes, and they're not strong enough to skip pass, and a lot of times they're not good enough ball handlers to potentially break it by themselves. So if we had adults that like were aware enough to say like, hey, let's play some zone, a lot of man, and we can do both, I think it'd be great, because then, yeah, okay, we're going to work on zone, we're going to work on man, you get a little bit of everything. But the problem is, I think it's too lopsided, where I think most most teams will play zone, and then
Yeah.
and I think there's some concepts that like, if you can play man to man, you can play zone, and I don't think the reverse of that is true. If you can play zone, doesn't mean you can play man to man. So I think it'd be much easier. It's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like learning, addition and subtraction before multiplication and division, and before then algebra, calculus, all that.
Yeah.
It's like, start with man to man, have that be the foundation, and then you can go to zone, and then you can go to all sorts of, special defenses, triangles and twos or whatever. But start with something that will work no matter what kind of defense you're playing. And so that's kind of the idea. And I just think we have too many adults that, again, put themselves selfishly ahead of the kids' development just because they want to win some games.
And it's that I'm not going to dive into that because I'll just get going in that rabbit hole, because that just
Yeah, it's a
it
deep
irritates
one.
me. Yeah, it just irritates me. It irritates me from the kid's perspective, and makes me sad, because we have to remember they're still kids, and they play basketball. And they start. It plays the key word in there. Play equals fun for them. I mean, how many times have you walked into a gym and what do you see? They're just shooting threes. They're playing knockout. Like, if we just, like, I bring my balls in, I put them down. It's the start of practice. The first thing they do, they just grab a ball, start shooting threes, or organize a game of knockout. I'm talking about, this is my, third and fifth grade teams. That's what they want to do. Right. And to them, it's still fun. So you still have to remember, the F word in basketball and AAU and club teams. It's fun. It's supposed to be fun. It's not a job. They are not adults. And they,
Yes.
anyway, see, you get me going
Yeah,
on that
I mean, no,
subject.
we totally agree with that. We
Yeah.
have an acronym, focus, and the F is for fun. That's our first value, because we're like,
Yeah.
look, these are kids. This is supposed to be fun. And fun doesn't always mean like easy. It doesn't
No.
always mean winning. I like what Jay Billis said. I helped Jay start up his basketball camp here in Charlotte. It's a great camp for like it's kind of an old school skills camp for high schoolers. But this one saying that he has that always stuck with me is, fun is doing hard things well. And I've kind of taken that, and yes, sometimes it's joking around, laughing, and all that,
Right.
but a lot of times, especially in what we're doing, it's like learning to do hard things well.
That's right.
And so, yeah, that we're on the same page there. That is our first value.
Yeah.
But it's just the adults, man. It's just, I honestly, I don't have an answer for it, because it really, like, it's just so disappointing weekend after weekend. I mean, we hosted a tournament in Charlotte this past weekend, a big tournament, 90 teams. We actually mandated, so we said no zone in this tournament, and
Oh,
it was great. And
interesting.
we got a lot of good feedback on it, like teams coming up to say, hey, if you guys do this again, we'll come back. We'd love to come back. Some teams did not like it. I definitely got yelled at by a coach because she apparently didn't know. But there was also there was a fight between parents. And it's just like, gosh, what are we doing as adults, man? Like,
Yeah.
we've got to grow up and stop, and start putting the kids first again. Stop thinking about ourselves. Stop being selfish as coaches, as parents, as just adults. It's really ugly what's happening out there, I think.
Yeah, it is really unfortunate. But so in Europe, they have the club team format, and briefly talk about that, because do they take the fun out of it? It always, every time I read and see stuff, it seems very serious. They're with the team a long time, right? Throughout the whole year. Um,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
actually an interesting question. I don't think they take the fun out of it.
hmm
Um, but I didn't grow up in that system, so I couldn't say but when I saw the younger club teams, like they
hmm
looked like they were having fun. And like maybe an example of that is like some of the most fun drills I ever did was as a pro overseas. Like now I think they're getting a little more popular here, but like there was a few drills that we used to do, like warm-up drills, especially like where it was essentially tag with a basketball. And
hmm
you had 20 to 35-year-olds running around laughing, like playing tag with a basketball.
Yeah.
There's certain rules about it. Or there was one game where like we had 6 hoops around the court, and to warm up you could score, you no dribble, two teams. It was like 7-on-7 or 8-on-8, and you could score in
Mm.
any hoop
Anywho,
without dribbling.
yeah.
And you could take the ball out of the net, you just couldn't score in the same hoop twice. And it was a great warm. It was
Uh,
so fun. And we brought that over
that's a
here
good
and started
one.
playing with our
Yeah.
kids. And so like I say that to say, like, they have some fun drills. So I'd imagine, like, if we're having fun as a 25-year-old, I'm sure the 15-year-old or the 10-year-old is
Yeah.
having fun too. So I'd imagine that they do an okay job. But yeah, over there it's not tied to scholastics. I mean, that's a big difference between what we do
Oh, that's
here and
right. Yeah.
there. And I'm all for school basketball, high school basketball. I think tons of great middle school and high school coaches out there that do an awesome job. It's great representing your school, playing in front of your fans. I had an awesome time playing in high school and college and all that. So I don't advocate like separating the two necessarily. Um, but that is a big difference between over there, because over there there's no sports run through their high schools. It's all through the
Yeah.
clubs. It's kind of like a pyramid model where you have the pro team up top, and then underneath you have various levels all the way down to a lot of times the youngest kids.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so let's dive. So we did talk about, okay, if we were going to change a club, and the club owner and what he could do. Let's break that down though. I'm a volunteer coach at a rec league. Um, think about, like, what's a practice structure for me based on this European method.
Yeah.
I have
So
an hour to an hour and a half, for example. Like, how would you break that down?
I would. The way I always like to do it, and to me it was like kind of the simplest way. And rec leagues are hard again because it's like, hey, parents, we need coaches who wants to volunteer. And a lot of
Right.
times it's like, oh gosh, I don't know anything about basketball, but I
That's right.
watch it on TV, so like I guess I'll do it. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's hard, and I recognize those challenges. But if you have an hour and a half, I would just say 30% should be kind of individual skill based, as a group, working on layups or shooting form or passing, ball handling, that sort of stuff. 30%. I think you do team stuff. You do team concepts, offense, defense, maybe teach some plays, maybe whatever it is. And then the last 30%, 40% could be controlled um scrimmages or controlled games. Like maybe it's 2-on-2 or 3-on-3, maybe it's no dribble 5-on-5, maybe it's 4-on-3, or something like that,
hmm
or 5-on-4, whatever that is. I'm not advocating for not scrimmaging and not playing games. I love games. I just think in practice they should be situational. They should be controlled. It can't just be roll the ball out and play.
Right.
Um, there is some time for that. You probably do need to play some 5-on-5 and just kind of let them play and see what happens. But you got to stop and teach as well. So I always kind of, if we had an hour and our practices at Pro Skills are normally an hour and a half, and we always say, hey, 30 minutes, you guys individual skill work, get them warm, work on those skills. 30 minutes, again, break up team concepts, and then 30 minutes, let's get back together and let's do some sort of controlled scrimmaging.
And in that control, can you describe what you would do in a controlled scrimmage?
Yeah, so I mean, it's just, and again, it doesn't have to be 5-on-5. It could be 3-on-3-on-3. You know, it could be that. It could be 2-on-2. Like I coach my daughter's rec team 10U this past winter, and we barely ever had more than 6 or 7 out of practice. So like we just constantly played 3-on-3. We never once played 5-on-5 in practice, and we played great in the games, and because like all the girls touched the ball and more in practice, and they got a lot of shots, and they just got a lot of court time in practice. But yeah, like I love no dribble stuff or limited dribble. It gets ugly, like you said, but like they get better and better and they figure it out. I love kind of the situational stuff where it's like, hey, let's start with a screen down coming off this, and then let's play out of it or something like that. You know, or let's start with a ball screen, and you're going to trap the ball screen, and then let's scramble out of it. So it's like situational stuff like that. But and then it just depends on the age and the grade and the, kind of the skill level of like how advanced you get. But all of that stuff I think is great.
Yeah, the situational stuff I think is starting from, I mean, you can think of 100 things to do where it's more game based and set up situations for your kids to succeed that you know that you're going to see and run into a class. And I think what's really important, because I hear this argument all the time, is, oh, my team, you know, yeah, I'm a rec league coach, and you know, you only have 6 players every twice a week because the other 4 or 3 are doing whatever, and you got to make the best of that, and you still can improve even if you have 6. The 3-and-3 or whatever you have you got to make that work, and it can work, especially at the youth level. Right?
Yeah.
And when I'm talking youth, I'm talking, the 2nd grade to 8th grade, or even younger than that.
And one of the best things I ever saw when I came back, it was my first couple of years, I decided to go out to Colorado Springs. I connected with USA Basketball. I went out to Colorado Springs to watch the 15 and under tryouts for their team. Don Showalter, great guy, great coach, was running it. But that was one of the best things I ever saw, because and it just reinforced what we were doing, and it made me feel more confident about it. Because with those kids, the best 15-year-olds in the country, a lot of them are in the NBA now. He was doing some of the most basic stuff to start out practice, like the line drill, dribble out, jump stop, pivot, pass back to your partner, go back. The box drill, dribble up to the elbow, pivot, then do some sort of finish, whatever he called out. He did a lot of 3-on-3. That was like a big drill he has. And he still talks about it to this day, like, because he likes doing that a lot, where, you got your teams waiting on the baseline to come in. You're playing 3-on-3. There's some rules about thanking the passer, and if you score, and if you don't, like, you're off, and some really good stuff. But it was some of the most basic stuff. And I was just like, man, if the best 15-year-olds in the country are doing this with USA Basketball, like, of course 4th graders in Charlotte should be doing it, or or in Moraga, California, or whatever. But it was just it was nice to see that. And I think a lot of coaches, they watch, well, formerly Mike Krzyzewski, or they watch Dan Hurley or whoever, and it's like they think they need to do all sorts of complicated stuff. But like, no, it's like, just do the basic stuff, man. The fundamentals work.
Yeah, well, and I think they get caught up in going on YouTube or seeing, scrolling through something on Instagram, and they're like, oh, that play is really good, and so-and-so scored off of that. Well, they scored off of it because they have a 6'7" center, right? 300 pounds, I can pound it down low. Now, unless you have that in 4th and 5th grade, right? Or they have players that, they're practicing 6 days a week, and then players are working individually on their own, right? So you got to, you absolutely have to think about the basics. I got two questions to kind of put this all together. I can't leave without talking about the women's basketball and what happened in women's basketball this year in the NCAA. And as a huge club owner that you are, I'm in over, since 2011, women's basketball has really dropped across the country and at the youth level, right? And are you seeing it come back up? Are we just at the forefront of that right now? More exciting times to come for women's basketball. How is what happened in the NCAA, I guess, is the real question, going to trickle down to our levels?
Yeah. I think we're just at the forefront now, and I
Mhm.
don't think we've seen quite yet the impacts of it at the youth level. I think that's going to take a year, 2 years, 3 years, hopefully. Like, I'm very much
Yeah,
hoping for that it continues to grow in popularity, because I'm with you. I read a couple of years back, there was an ESPN article that had the
that's
data
right. Yeah.
about
Hmm.
girls youth basketball, how it was declining, and soccer and volleyball were on the incline.
That's right.
um,
Yeah. Hmm.
and there was a lot of thinking that, like, that's why it was declining, is because volleyball, soccer were more appealing for various reasons. But I hope with, Caitlin Clark and LSU, and some of the other great stuff happening in the WNBA too, that girls basketball starts to get more popular, and we that's like priority number one for us, because we are mostly boys.
Yeah.
And it stems a large part because of the, like what we just talked about, the decrease in popularity over the last number of years. Like, we're 20% girls, 80% boys teams, but we'd love to get to 50-50 if we can at some point. So we're working at it, but I really do hope that it continues to increase, based off some of the Caitlin Clark and college stuff, and then the WNBA stuff that seems to be picking up. So hopefully we'll
Hopefully we'll
start
see
seeing
it.
that
Yeah.
more over the coming years.
Well, and just a brief side note, you mentioned, the other sports that are popular for girls, soccer, volleyball. Here by us, it's water polo. You talk about,
Hmm.
you think AAU coaches and clubs are crazy. Dive into those, those programs and, into those sports. It makes us look like, you know, uh,
It is very interesting.
saints.
Yeah, we do study some of these other club sports, and again, positives and negatives with it all. I do think one interesting difference is most of them are regulated from the top down by some sort of governing body. Like, I know USA Soccer pretty much runs youth soccer, and there's no regulation in the basketball world. USA basketball and junior NBA have tried to do some stuff over the last few years, and it's a good effort, but it's not it's not like mandated, it's not regulated. So I do think hopefully the NBA will do more in the coming years. I think that's probably our only hope. But it's going to have to be a big effort. So I'm not exactly sure what the solution is for it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't
that's kind
either.
of interesting difference between, like, some of those other club sports and
Yeah.
basketball.
All right. Well, let's put a bow on this. What is the message you want to leave that coaches hear today? What do we need to do? And first, yeah, I'll just leave it there. Kind of an open-ended question for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like the biggest thing to me is just adults need to start being adults, and stop being selfish, stop putting our egos first, think about the kids first, and then try to continue to educate ourselves on, like, hey, what are the best practices, and what are the things we should be teaching, what's most beneficial for the kids, even if that means you're not going to maybe win as many games right away. How do we prioritize development over winning? um, I think would be probably the biggest thing, because I just think, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, it just seems, the mental health of adults has kind of declined, and so we need to
Yeah.
start taking care of ourselves. We need to start being more mature, and putting the kids first, and prioritizing development over the games, and over the winning.
And I'll just use again my club as an example. I think we won last summer 3 games. was focused on fundamentals and
Mhm.
got better. Didn't lose a player, and the kids, I mean, I was just looking at pictures the other day, like in videos of them creating videos of their teammates and doing, talk about having fun. Like the
Yeah.
win-loss record didn't matter. It was about,
Yeah.
hey, we get to go to practice every day and get a little bit better, and we get to spend time with people we like.
Yeah,
Um,
they're not going to
so,
remember like how many games they lost or won in fifth grade, like when
no,
they're our age or when they're 25. Like they're going to
no,
remember like how they felt and like
that's
how
right.
coaches made them feel
Mhm.
at the time, and like was it a positive experience, and did my dad like sit there and scream at me the whole time, or whatever. They're gonna remember that stuff, whether you're a coach or a parent. They're gonna remember how you made them feel versus like winning, losing, scoring 30, whatever it is.
Yeah. Again, there's just was kind of smiling at what something you said is the missed shot, and I look up at the stands at one of my parents, right? Um, and it just, or the number of
Shoot
times,
it, shoot
yeah,
it.
oh, oh, I thought I was the only one,
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
thankfully, I mean, I have those conversations with my parents and say, look, for the 60 minutes that a game is going on, they're mine. You have them the rest of, the day. I just, once a week on the weekend, I get them for, 2 games. So
yeah.
let
Yeah,
me
just
do the
sit back and
coaching. So
relax.
have
Yeah,
fun,
sit back
enjoy
and
it.
relax and like let us do our thing and like just
Yeah.
enjoy it, right? It's
Yeah.
it's a difficult thing because I have kids, they're playing soccer, they're
Of
doing
course.
some basketball, and like, I could feel it inside me. Like I don't like to see my kids struggle, but like I've seen enough bad behavior from parents where I'm like, I'm just gonna sit here, shut my mouth, watch, enjoy, watching them play and support them, and we'll we'll see what happens. But
You'll bash the coach
thankfully,
on the way home. That's what you'll
yeah,
wait for,
yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
I joke. All right, Brendan, where can coaches find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, Brendan Winters, and also Pro Skills Basketball. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the LinkedIn, all the social.
Yeah.
So would love to people to reach out, DM us or tag us or whatever. We would love to hear from anyone who listens to this.
Yeah, and I'll put your info in the show notes as well.
Yeah, and we're at proskillsbasketball.com in case anyone wants to check out our website too.
Coach, you're doing amazing work. Keep it up. Keep it up. You're doing a good thing for basketball and changing the mindset. And your approach of focusing on kids is spot on. Preaching to the choir on that one. And if we have more coaches like you doing that, hopefully we can make a positive impact on lots of young lives.
Well, thanks a lot and appreciate all you do as well. You're doing great stuff out there. Love the podcast and appreciate you having me on.
All right, Coach. Thanks. Till next time.
We'll see you.
Hey, Coach, so glad you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed it a lot. Actually, if you did, subscribe and like, and then go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better.